Welcome to another episode of ISAG Talks About Change. This is the second episode of ISAG podcast, which is going to be in English. This podcast represents 5 main pillars of ISAG: be creative, be digital, be green, be global, and be passionate, dedicated to all the next generation of inspirational leaders. Today we will talk about the usage of technology in hotel and tourism industry. Go digital to go green. Our guest today is Nuno Pinto Gonçalves. Nuno, welcome to ISAG and our podcast. So Nuno is a CEO and co-founder of EMITU, which is a deep tech IoT solution startup in Porto, Portugal. He is an electrical engineer turned MBA with more than 15 years of experience in several industries, including automotive and logistics. He has worked in various roles, including sales, business management, and general positions. So Nuno, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. Let me give an idea about EMITU and then I pass it to you. So EMITU is an IoT solution, is an innovative IoT platform that enables you to build complex real-time solutions while reducing development time from weeks to hours. The solution enables IoT developers across different industries such as manufacturing, logistics, smart buildings, utilities, healthcare, and cold chain to develop simpler but effective IoT solutions. So, Nuno, let's start the podcast with this simple question. How did you get this job?
Well, it's a funny story. I was not planning that. It was not something that was planned. So it all started when I was, working in a, I would say, traditional job. Mm-hmm. And I found out that I could use technology to solve problems that I were facing. And there were no one developing solutions for those problems. And I was wondering, even they were not identifying those connecting technology with needs, how to use, how we can rewire or use that technology to solve a particular problem. And then I found out that could be, there's a set of needs that almost all company has and have. And then I decided to start implementing them. And it all started with a few first experiences, implementing, this connecting hardware to software to solve certain problems, and then it evolved to what we have now.
Wonderful. So, but what did you study at university?
Well, I always loved technology. Mm-hmm. I had my first computer, at age 13, and I decided to work with computers so I attended electrical engineering and computer programming.
Wonderful. So, and let's talk about your company. What do you do at EMITU?
So, as a CEO, I have to do a lot of things, obviously, because a small team, tasks like defining strategy of the team, and that as a startup, we are always, making adjustments on the strategy, making sure that we are always increasing the efficiency of our sales process, of the operational process, everything, as we don't have a startup has a lot of constraints,
yes,
time, capital, and so we must be very effective. And as a CEO, I had to make sure that the survival rate of the company is the highest possible.
Wonderful. Do you love your job or do you like it?
No, I love it. It's something that after all, going through all the pains of being an entrepreneur, because sometimes it's a painful process when you're faced with a lot of no's, when you're faced with all the setbacks, because doing the difference between the theory and the practice.
Oh, yeah. True.
And it is, but at the end of the day, I love it. It's something that I really, I love, going, waking up and going to the office and working on solutions to solve real problems for customers.
Just as a note is that I know Nuno for some years, and he's a very likable person, and his team loves him, just for your information. So when we talk about IoT, everyone thinks about smart homes and Alexa, Google Home. But can you share with us what is really IoT?
Well, IoT in a nutshell, it's bringing value to by bringing value to someone or some organization, whatever, by connecting hardware to software. So that way we get real-time data from those devices. It could be a smart thermometer that like Neste that we use at home to automatically change the settings of our heating system, or it could be a device that is monitoring a shop floor equipment to find out if the equipment is as a malfunction. So there are basically the technology that was developed in recent years allow the connection of hardware that once was disconnected,
yes,
and assigning a layer of software that brings value by getting the data and interacting. It's not only getting data from device, but also sending data, like as I said it with the thermometer example. You can adjust the heating settings through the cloud. So the cloud sends configuration to the thermometer.
Yeah, I think that's getting a bit more technical for our audience. But let's step a bit back and understand this. We have two types of IoT. One of them is a consumer IoT, one of them is an industrial IoT. Just give a quick overview of these two for our audience to understand what's the difference.
Well, the consumer IoT, we tend to associate it more to this like smart home, smart watches, those devices that are used by consumers more, to increase the comfort, to monitor some parameters of their, like a Fitbit or activity tracker, and those kind of devices. We can call it consumer IoT. And you have the industrial IoT, which is more like for more complex, more robust, because they tend to IoT solutions, because they tend to, or they need to work in different environments, and they like in terms of reliability, for instance, because if your smart thermometer as a malfunction doesn't work properly, you only implications are lower. But when a device in a shop at a manufacturing plant doesn't work properly, and it stops a production line, that may implies millions of euros being lost.
That makes sense, I would say. Thanks for the clarification. So let's talk about energy crisis in Europe. I think that's something which is critical right now, and which is something that we are facing. So let me give a bit of a statistics. Energy crisis in Europe is something very I would say hot topic, and everyone talks about it because this is something critical for everyone. But let's give you a bit of a picture of what's happening around the world, and especially in Europe. Energy prices have hit all-time high in 2022, especially as a consequence of Russia's unjustified invasion of Ukraine and its use of gas supplies as a weapon of war. The wholesale price of electricity in the EU's internal market directly linked the price gas, which is mostly imported. But we need to know that the crisis was caused by a variety of economic factors such as labor shortage, disputes, and climate change, and was later compounded by 2022's Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So tell us what's happening in the EU with the energy crisis.
Well, there's an energy crisis not only in the EU, but also as Europe is including countries, almost all countries of Europe are being affected by this energy crisis that started even before the Ukraine's invasion by Russia. And because there were the closing of power plants, the most polluting power plants like coal, being shut down by most countries. In Portugal, we also shut down our coal power plants, and that created an imbalance in terms of energy producing, affecting the base load. And this problem was exacerbated by the invasion of Ukraine, because as we impose sanctions on Russia, and the European Union, and particularly countries like Germany, that had over-reliance on Russian natural gas. Almost 50% of the natural gas used by Germany came from Russia. Mm-hmm. And as the sanctions imposed limits on the energy being acquired to Russia, and more recently, a couple of months ago, the sabotage of Nord Stream pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, that completely shut down the flows, or almost completely. There's flows of Russian natural gas to Europe, but most of the natural gas, most of the flows from natural gas from Russia had stopped completely, and that means that Europe need to search for other sources of natural gas.
Sense? Because
natural gas is very important in electricity production, and as well as other industrial manufacturing plants as well. It's being as one of the primary energy drivers. But in terms of electricity, and natural gas is very important. Mm-hmm. So when you have the price of natural gas increasing by 8 to 10-fold in a couple of years, that has a massive impact on electricity.
So does this mean that we will have higher prices of energy in the upcoming years?
I would say so. Unfortunately, that is a very probable scenario, because converting from gas that is being distributed by pipelines, like the ones like Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2, and converting those flows to LNG, liquefied natural gas, implies that we build terminals, we'll build more storage capabilities, and that takes a lot of capital, and takes time to build those terminals. Mm-hmm. And I would say that we will need at least 3 years. Mm-hmm. But most of the projections imply at least 5 years for we would get the price of natural gas to before the crisis.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Levels before the crisis.
So, and how this energy crisis can impact Portugal?
Portugal reliance on natural gas is, or at least the natural gas from pipelines is it's very reduced. Most of the flows from natural gas come from LNG at the Sines terminal, and Portugal and Spain are lucky in terms of having built those terminals before, and we can import. Basically, we do most of our imports from of natural gas from LNG, and having said that, LNG is also the price of LNG increased by also 8-fold. Mm-hmm. It's linked to the Dutch TTF, and this makes that the electricity price in Portuguese electrical grid has increased by, at the end of the day, 3 times.
Yes. So let's have a look at some statistics about hospitality and tourism industry before I ask you the next question. Portugal's economic growth increased substantially in the first half of 2022, helped by strong rebound in foreign tourism. Therefore, services exports moved above pre-pandemic levels and became a significant growth contributor with an annualized rise around 70%. In 2022, the Portuguese economy will register one of the strongest growth rates in the EU, with the real GDP expanding by 5.9%, supported by EU recovery funds and the continued recovery in the tourism sector. And the Portuguese economy continued to perform strongly in the first half of 2022, with real GDP still 0.8% above pre-pandemic levels in April to June. So these statistics show that the rebound after pandemic is going well in terms of tourism in Portugal. And interestingly, in the second quarter of 2022, residents in Portugal made 5.5 million trips, an increase of 52% compared to the second quarter of 2009. So it means that even not thinking about outside tourism, but internal tourism, which also increased. And leisure, recreation, or holidays was the main reason for traveling in the second quarter of 2022. And the free private accommodation remained the main accommodation option. So the question is this: how the energy crisis can have an impact on the hospitality and tourism management industry, especially in Portugal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that all businesses are being impacted by energy prices.
Definitely.
And what a probable scenario is that we may face a recession, and that recession may lead to lower tourist demand. And that will put pressure on the hospitality margins, gross margins. Because when demand lowers, we need to reduce the price of nights, the cost of rooms, in order to attract more demand. And when you have increasing costs, because electricity price doesn't care if your occupation rate is
0 or 0%.
They are the cost is still there. That means that that will be another force of pressure on the gross margin of the hotels and short-term rentals and so on. So I believe that this will imply a change of behavior and change of strategy in terms of in what regards energy consumption, to increase energy efficiency, at the end of the day reduce costs by saving energy.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So how can hotels and tourism industry basically take advantage of technology, especially IoT, to help them save energy and then saving costs?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that the advantage of how you can have better insights, and the advantage of using technology is getting real-time data, so knowing how every minute how your building is using energy. And the technology currently allows in an easy way to install energy meter and smart meters at every major or intensive consuming equipment that you have at your building, and monitor remotely those equipment, so you know that your air conditioner or HVAC unit is consuming a lot of energy. Yes. Without being almost the one at venues or in a more empty state, if you will. And this allows you to adjust having this information in a proactive way and not reactive. Yeah, because I would say that most of the old technology, yeah, which is the invoice of the supplier of electricity, yeah, that you would get at the end of the month, and you would read it and say, oh, this month, the past month, I use a lot of energy, but you didn't know how you could manage or to do differently and reduce costs. So this is the reactive way. With the Internet of Things, with real-time energy monitoring, you can have the proactive way, which allows you to know in every instant where you can save. If it's by reducing the set point of the air conditioning, it's by turning off equipment A or B, that information with this data, real-time data, and how the software supplies you this distilled data, if you will, that will not only save you time, but save you costs save you money by reducing energy consumption.
That it's very interesting. So, can you give us some real examples of implementing IoT in this industry?
Well, yes, there are many examples. I can talk about, for instance, as I said, monitoring HVAC units and monitoring air conditioning, and we can connect by installing the temperature sensors at the lobby, at the restaurant room, and on all other venues that the building has. You can then have real-time information about the temperature of those places, of those rooms, and compare it with outside temperature.
Yes.
So let's say, like, if outside is 20 degrees, but you have an inside temperature of in the summer, for instance, or let's say outside temperature 25, but inside 18. This is a very an example where your HVAC unit would be wasting a lot of energy to cool down a place when the area where the outside temperature is not high enough to justify the inside temperature, and this could provide you in a quick way. The difference between outside temperature and inside temperature can provide you a lot of value to configure your air conditioning device to save energy. And according to International Energy Agency, reducing the air conditioning setting or reducing the heating, in this case heating by 1 degree, would save 7% of natural gas consumption.
Only 1
degree. So
if you lower,
if you lower 1 degree, in all buildings, and including homes, if you reduce by 1 degree the heating settings, it would mean 7% less of energy of gas consumption at the end of the year.
I think now all the audience should go and just reduce the air conditioner, a heater 1% less.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, just pause this video and go do it right now, because let's save energy.
And as a country, as a continent, and as a world, we need to reduce energy consumption.
Definitely. This is something that we all should be part of it and play a role as a team. The whole, I would say, the world and also the EU.
And we should not expect that renewable energy be abundant, because you also need to produce the solar photovoltaic models, and you use carbon dioxide. You emit carbon dioxide because you use fossil fuels to produce those. And we are far behind a time when we have energy abundance.
Yeah. So that's something that we need to be cautious about.
Yeah.
So let's step a bit back and understand how basically tech can be used in buildings in different levels to be able to save energy. Because we're talking about giving examples, so let's step a bit back in terms of foundations. Because some of our audience are coming from the hotels and tourism, so it means that they are in charge of hotels. So how they can really think and also apply a strategy to be able to save cost in the short, medium, and long term. Because they would consider that implementing technology would be costly at the beginning. So justifying this initial cost is challenging for the management. So it means that if I'm a front desk person, I would see some challenges and I'll report it to my supervisor, and the supervisor goes to the next level. And when it reaches to the top managers, they say, oh wow, that's a huge bill that I want to invest in technology, but how can I get the return on investment?
Well, the ROI, finding the ROI is always, for some investments, always tricky in a way, because you cannot how do we find the ROI by increasing the user experience?
Yeah.
Are we charging more for each room? If we place occupancy sensors, if we place sensors that can monitor the usage of a room, and like as I were discussing, adjusting the air conditioning based on the guest, if the guest is present in the room or not. But we can reduce costs, but we are also increasing the user experience at the room level.
Yes,
and sometimes finding the ROI for this kind of investment is not easy.
Sure.
But I would say for energy, one of the easy ways for the hospitality industry to invest in energy efficiency is to use the EU recovery funds, because there will be there already are funds for decarbonization that includes the energy efficiency, includes systems like using smart meters with IoT technology, includes renewable energy. So there are a lot of ways that businesses can use these funds, because it will help their ROI, increase their ROI, and and also help them reduce costs. So it's a win-win situation.
Sure.
Sometimes when what I advise companies to do is to invest. You don't need to invest a lot of money up front with technology. You can just place like a few sensors on your building with a very low amount of investment, just to test technology. Do like a proof of concept. See how the technology helps you managing day-to-day operations and reducing your energy consumption or increasing user experience and the IoT technology is modular. You can install one sensor or you can install 1,000, but you don't need to install 1,000 on day one. You can install one on day one, and 1 month after you can install a few more and do step by step. That's one of the advantages of technology, because there's no need to do huge investments up front.
Yeah, that would be the challenge, because if they want to justify such things, I wouldn't have such a big price to pay for that. So I would say that the challenge would be to start small and then gradually go big. So I want to return back to my question about the types of investment in terms of buildings and application of technology. How many levels can we invest in terms of applying technology, in terms of, let's say, if I want to start a building, one stage, or if I already have something in place as a hotel, how can I take technology into the construction level? Or the second one would be the building which already exists and is in operation for some years.
I would say most of the hotels now, or most of the buildings are already built. So we have thousands of buildings nationwide, and we don't need to demolish those buildings and start new ones, because that we need to find creative ways, and effective ways in terms of cost to convert those buildings to a smart one. If you are building a new, if you plan to build a new hotel, for instance, you can also project plan from day one to use smart systems to monitor to change air conditioning, like a building management system that can be interconnected to other systems, because most of the buildings have a building management system that allows you to control air conditioning, monitor the status of different equipment,
ventilation,
and so on. And like for instance, one example of energy efficiency is to adjust ventilation, insufflation of air, and exhaustion of air. As you are inserting air in a room and removing old air or used air from that room, we can adjust the level of ventilation to the number of people that is a certain time in a certain area. So we don't need to, by using a CO2 sensor. By using a CO2 sensor, you can monitor how many people are in the room and adjust the ventilation rate according to that number of people. But if you want to do it on an old building, you cannot interact in a software side with the controller of that ventilation system.
Okay.
And that needs a little more investment than on a new building. New buildings, new building management systems have more modern systems that can be interconnected, for instance, IoT platforms, and we can then control easily those systems like the ventilation systems. On older buildings, there needs to be an investment in terms of installing a hardware, we call it a gateway, that connects to that building management system. And then if it's not a very ancient system, we can hopefully control those systems and build a smart building system. But as I say, there are many funding options that hotels and the hospitality industry can use to upgrade their BMS, because at the end of the day, it's all about energy efficiency and decarbonization.
Yeah. Coming back to the energy efficiency issue, as I was reading in the news that there's apparently a government mandate, which is some sort of helping or enforcing some public organizations to be able to help, offering them some fund to reduce energy consumption. Do you have any information about that one?
Yes, that's called the Energy Saving Plan, or Plano Poupança de Energia in Portuguese, and this was a plan that was published by the Portuguese government a few weeks ago, and it derives from a directive from the European Union to reduce reduce gas consumption. The goal is to reduce gas consumption because we lack I'm not sure if you know about that, but there's only, in terms of storage, there's only 7 weeks of storage in European Union of gas.
7 weeks?
7 weeks. So about 1,000 terawatt hour.
So this means that if there's a sudden storm or something, we are all in trouble.
Storm, or if there's no supply. So if you don't have enough supply in terms of LNG currently, so let's say if China economy reheats and starts bidding more for the flotillas that are bring LNG to terminals in Europe. So that means that if we don't get supply, we will run out of gas, and not only the winter will be very harsh, but we need to stop electricity production. We need to stop industrial manufacturing plants. There's a lot of demand destruction coming from manufacturing plants because it's not viable to work. And this means that we need about 30 billion cubic meters of gas.
Can you give us a bit of what does that mean, 30 billion?
30 billion. This is about the between the current flows, the difference between the current flows and storage capabilities that you have in order for next summer to have guaranteed flows, even with guaranteed flows and guaranteed long contracts that you can buy natural gas. This 30 billion is even with LNG terminals, even with supply from natural gas, is missing because you don't have a supply or storage capabilities to store or even store those 30 billion cubic BCMs, or maybe buy it from somewhere else because you don't have terminal capacity. So these 30 billion cubic meters means that either we save energy or we will have to rationalize energy next winter.
So it's getting serious. It's like those Hollywood movies that we see, but we don't believe, but apparently it's coming on our way.
Yes.
So the question is, how can we as people who are normal citizens practice saving energy? Then before going back to the hotel and tourism, I just want to ask this question because sometimes we as citizens can support this initiative. How can we do that? But the challenge would be some of our buildings are yet very old, but not very well isolated. So energy efficiency level, there are some of them are even in D level, not even B. So how can we save energy?
Well, one of the most easy ways is by having better insulated buildings, but sometimes that's not easy to install, the insulation at buildings, although even at the consumer or residential level, there are measures, economic measures to support, or financial measures to support the installation of insulation at homes, but we can do it by assessing at either every type of building. You can look at a hotel or a home or your own home. You can assess where what is the most easy thing to do in terms of energy saving. Like if it's install to windows with better insulation, if it's to install solar panels, or there, but everyone knows their own reality better, and you can find out what will have the lowest payback, and there will be a need to also reduce consumption by a little discomfort, like reducing 1 degree. So instead of just wearing one layer of clothing when you are hanging out at home, because you have like the eating at a comfortable, temperature setting, but maybe adding another layer of clothing will, reducing the heating setting by 1 or 2 degrees, save a lot of energy.
Good. So coming back to the hotels and tourism industry, there are some practices which some hotels they are doing in terms of saving environment, not necessarily energy. For example, as you know, when you in a traditional way or current practice, major hotel is that when you want to check in, they offer you a paper which has your room number plus a plastic key, which is the key access to your door. When you go upstairs, you have to go there and just insert that plastic cord inside a slot to turn on the air conditioning or all the facilities that you want to use. So what they are doing currently is that they decided to remove this paper and plastic. So there is no access card for you. So they are using applications that you can enter the room. But the challenge would be how, when I enter a room without a plastic card, to insert in that slot, turn on the electricity. If I remove that action, then the electricity should be always on, or the air conditioner should be always on to be able to have a proper temperature. So how can we use technology in this area to be able to remove these steps, make the experience more seamless, improve the experience of the user, in the meantime, save energy?
Yes, you can use, for instance, you can use an app on your mobile phone to unlock the door.
Yes.
So using an FC. And also by using occupancy sensors on the room, the controller of the electricity and the air conditioning of the room knows that you are there. Like knows the guest is there, because even when the guest is sleeping, when the guest is in the bathroom, we can have like IDEM sensors installed on the toilet or on the room that the guest is not aware of, and it is just finding out if someone is there. And when you enter the room, the system can know that you are there.
Yes.
And turn on the electricity and turn on the air conditioning.
But the question would be, a bit of a concern for users would be the privacy. These devices, do they have any camera? Or no. Is it just a sensor?
It's just a sensor. It doesn't have any camera. Okay. So it doesn't, and this is just local of the controller of the room. So there's no information about whether that information goes to outside the hotel or outside the room. So this is privacy. It's possible to have IoT technology without hurting the privacy of the users.
That's super important.
That's super important, and we don't want to think about there will be a hidden cameras, exactly. Just tracking my movements, or if I'm in bed, if I'm reading a book, if I'm
sure.
There's but smart sensors are just smart to do one thing, just to know if the guest is there, but not smart to know what they are doing.
That makes sense. So somehow they detect the movement and they do that. So that's quite interesting. So I was reading about some hotels that what they do as a foundation to save, again, it's not about energy, but in terms of water, they have two separate water systems. One is for the toilet and for the bathroom. For the shower, they're using the refined rainwater, and they have special tanks that they can use that, and then the other one for the drinking part. So is there any way that we can implement technology in this area also?
Well, you can have like sensors that can track, even predict when it will be rain. You can have like, it doesn't need to be a sensor. It's like a software that is gets weather forecast,
that would be cool,
and predicts if it will rain in the next couple of hours of days. And you can have if your tank of water rain is getting low, if you need to use water from the water grid instead of using rainwater, so you can predict when you need to adjust system for that, and our system can do it automatically based on the weather forecast and based on the level of water in the tank. So it could be a more system that I would say that if systems are properly configured and using the technology, they also have automation.
Yes, that's
not
true.
Only knowing the level of water in the tank, but also work with that, automate that information in order to adjust systems to change from rainwater tank to the normal water grids.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say the beauty of technology is that it not only helps us to I would say collect data, but also in prediction. So it's like predictive maintenance. So the challenge would be to first I would say educating the market, because a lot of the hotels are a bit kind of reluctant in terms of doing that. First thing, and then second thing, as I said, is about the cost, to justify the cost. But if you look at these whole solutions, the question would be, how feasible are they really in practice? It means that, can we start, as you said, small? But if they want to start small, what would you recommend as the initial stage or step?
Mm-hmm. The most important part in every solution is software. Software can adapt to a changing context. Yes. So if you start small, software needs to allow starting small, and scaling needs to scaling not only in terms of sensors, but scaling in terms of use cases. Mm-hmm. So if you start small and monitor, like the most, I would say, easiest thing to do with IoT is to monitor level temperature.
Yes, the easiest.
Easy to do because you install a wireless temperature sensor. Just you have a system up and running, installed and running in less than 1 hour, so it's very easy to install and start running. And but that system, that solution, cannot be flexible. That then, when you want to do the next step or 3 steps ahead, like in 6 months or 1 year, software doesn't allow you to do that, because it was limited just to the initial step. I would say that it's very important that the software part is able to use that flexibility.
So you mean the software has a potential to scale, is not limited in terms of scope if you want to scale the whole project. So it's not only limited if you want to add more sensors, more gateway to the whole ecosystem, it's able. And
yes, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have like managing different systems.
Yes.
That don't have homogeneous data flow between those systems. Because let's say you have a system to manage your air conditioning, but you are not monitoring energy consumption. How can you feed air conditioning settings or change the air conditioning settings based on for instance, on the energy consumption? Because I will give you an example. In a hotel, there are electrical vehicle chargers, right?
Okay.
And when if a guest wants to charge a vehicle, when there's peak demand, the infrastructure cannot sometimes does not allow the charger to be the charger to fully supply current to the charger, to the vehicle. Yes. Because let's say, in example, you have a maximum, say, 100 kilowatt of demand of your load cannot be higher than 100, and but you are on the 70, and someone wants to charge their car, which demands like 60, so that surpasses the 100 limit that you have.
Exactly.
So you have to have a system that is managing the energy consumption of the whole building and adjust the charging capacity of the charger so it doesn't surpass the peak or the maximum load that you can have. And this is an example where you can have an energy monitoring system and a system to manage the electrical chargers, and they need to communicate.
Yes. Communication is important.
Communication,
even in industrial world.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's quite a great example, I would say, because the challenge of some hotels would be they have several backend systems that they are having. And the concern would be, okay, do you want me to invest on another system, another platform? But I would say the beauty of this IoT platforms that you mentioned, and I believe EMITU has this solution also, is that it can integrate several platforms and put them in one single hub that they can have access and they can manage it easily with one, I would say, interface. Is that correct?
Yes. I would say that to IoT needs to have three main capabilities. One is to easily collect information like sensors, HVAC units, whatever. Collect easily the information from those devices. The second is to process that data. And process that data means like I want to, in this example of the electrical vehicle charger,
yes,
you want to limit the amount of power you supply to the vehicle because you don't want to get more load or surpass the maximum load that your building has. And this is like an example of information processing when you are combining different variables to assess a certain condition. And the third is to distribute that information. The distribution means that I can for instance, supply my building management system with settings to adjust HVAC unit.
Yeah.
So how do you easily integrate in all these dimensions, collecting, processing, and distributing information?
That's quite amazing, I would say. One more questions would be, there are some practices in some hotels in a sense that they want to reduce the paper menu. Because when you enter your room, usually you have several papers next to your, remote control for the TV, which is, that's some regulations, some menus. But the challenge would be, so each time that they want to increase the price or reduce the price, hopefully, they have to print a new set of menu. So, there is a possibility that they can have these menus integrated, which can be demonstrated on a TV, on your LCD when you enter, and basically with a click of a button, they can just simply update the whole pricing of the menu, and then they can have it on the screen. But the only paper, according to the regulations of Portugal, is to have a paper behind the door. If I'm not mistaken, which I was reading about it, is to have the minimum and the maximum price for that rooms. That's an official paper that must be there. The rest can be removed. So can you give us an idea of how we can, like what you were saying about integration of these platforms, how can we implement IoT in a sense that we can remove all these papers from rooms in terms of updating the system and having a very seamless, again, experience for the guests?
Well, one of the ways is using a mobile app that guests can download and use even for self-service, yes, for self-check-in. And they could use the app or the corporate TV on their TV on the room, mm-hmm, to order room service.
Wonderful.
So instead of having to call person and using the printed menu, yes, to search for what you want, you can search on the mobile app or search on the corporate TV, on the TV, and select an order from there.
Yes.
So in ideal, it would be also, because they know where you are ordering from, the room number, you could order. It's easier for you as a guest to search the entire options, the extras options for a certain dish, let's say.
Yeah, and allergies, if you want to know the ingredients. Yeah. If you are vegetarian or vegan, you want to know if there's an option.
You can even save. So if you are a frequent guest, you can even save like that information, like if you are allergic to something. So the menu being presented to you could be filtered based on your preferences.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful experience.
Because if you don't are allergic to gluten, every option that has gluten would be removed.
Yeah, that's called user experience, yeah. And that's how we can take advantage of technology to be able to offer a better experience.
Indeed, and I would add that you can, as a hotel manager, you can do these experiences where you can remove the friction of some things that doesn't add a lot of value to the guest experience, where a person is not needed, like an ordering system that could be digitalized in order to be more simple. And you can then direct your human resource and to things where the user or the guest gives more importance to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why technology can be used to change how for things where a person is not needed to be receiving an order because it doesn't add any value to the user, and that way you focus on what is most important to the guest.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say if they're using the applications, obviously, if they have any comment about anything, it would be easier for them to share the comments or reviews or anything, like the bed is not comfortable, I don't know, the sheets are not clean or something. They can have a better, I would say, interaction and sharing, because it's a one-to-way, one-to-one, I would say, interaction with the hotel. So and one thing I wanted to add in this area is that it's interesting to see that some hotels also, they are implementing some sort of a technology when the cleaning personnel, they are cleaning, and when it is ready, so they don't need to walk all the way or just call the front desk to inform them that the rooms are ready to be checked in. So, and how can, for example, tech can be used in this area? For example, let me rephrase my question, is that in some hotels, the cleaning personnel, they will clean it, but they have to run, sometimes they don't have phones, they have to run all the way to front desk to inform them, okay, it's ready to be checked in. The people are waiting downstairs, but again, how can tech can be used to facilitate this process?
So one easy thing that an hotel can do is, like, we can place a small sensor on the room that it's a Bluetooth sensor that can be just to identify the room number. So the cleaning team, the housekeeping, when enter the room, cleans the room, and by having a mobile device on the phone, they don't need to even take it off. They can, we know that they were there. We know how long they were cleaning the room.
The proximity, you mean?
Yeah, by measuring the proximity to that sensor, and we can then, if we can have a user housekeeping team can just say, oh, this room is cleaned, or it can be done automatically based on the time that was spent there. And that way you can feed that information to the management software of the hotel, so the room can be available for checking in for the next guest automatically.
That would add a lot of value. I think that's all my questions. But before wrapping it up, is there anything that you would like to add that I missed to ask in this area?
I just want to highlight, in terms of energy, one thing. We will still face an energy problem for many years.
Wow.
It's and if you see the current natural gas prices are in the range of 30 euros per megawatt hour, to a warmer October, warmer than normal October.
Yeah.
And that made the supply for natural gas reduced, and consequently natural prices have come down. But the futures for for February, for instance, are in the range of 140 euros per megawatt hour. So it's like 3 to 4 times more than with the regular expected supply. That means that the problem of imbalance is still there in terms of energy. And this problem will not be solved away, unfortunately. We will want cheap energy, but we don't not expect, at least for the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. But these higher prices in energy means that businesses of all sorts, including of hospitality, need to look carefully to energy prices. If you, at the end of the day, if you cannot pass that price to the customer, you need to either have it go to your losses or assume your losses, or you do what is best, which is to reduce energy consumption and to use technology to reduce energy consumption.
Yeah, I think that's quite serious, because anyhow, someone should, I would say, subsidize this cost. It can be the hotel, the government, or the citizens. So, and if we do not, I would say, if we do not have a proper strategy, again, overall, including citizens, I would say this crisis will be even more serious in the upcoming months and years to come, I would say.
And we cannot expect the government to be always subsidizing the energy price, because the economy will you take money from like healthcare system to subsidize energy, because you cannot like just print money.
That's true. So thanks again, Nuno. Appreciate sharing your point of view and giving your ideas in terms of how we can apply technology in hotels and in tourism industry. So to wrap it up, I would say it was quite interesting to know basically what is IoT and how we can take advantage of IoT in terms of application usage and getting the benefits of technology in our daily life and also in hospitality industry. So I would like to thank all the audience, but before wrapping it up, let's not forget that hospitality is all about people and the experience we offer them. Technology is an enabler, can help us to improve this experience. Thank you. See you in the next episode.